Hello everybody, you can't really see me very well. Let's just try and do that. And then you might be able to see me. Hello, it's me. I am George. I'm back once again with PSGL Tier 3. As you'll notice, to my left, there is no Alex Chisholm at the moment. He's got a bit of a personal situation that's just unfolding. He'll hopefully be here very shortly. Maybe at some point throughout the course of qualifying, but for the time being, you've just got to deal with me. Anyway, it is going to be China time, I think. Off the top of my head, just remembering it's China this week. We're back in Shanghai. That is the location, and that is the track. Obviously, not one that gets raced a lot in overall F1 these days. It's taken off the calendar, yeah, maybe for good reason. It has given some boring races over the years, but nothing that a good PSGL meeting can't fix, right? Hopefully, we can get a little bit more action from it this time around. So let's just hop into it. We've got qualifying going straight away. It's going to be a bit of a busy track. We've got 17 drivers out here this week, including reserves. Lillian is thankfully back this week. Obviously missed last week due to unfortunate family circumstances, so I hope all is well with Lillian, championship leader at the moment. Of course, got all of our regulars and championship protagonists pretty much as a part of this one as well. So all of the usual suspects that you'd expect to see are in attendance, which is nice for us as a viewer this week. Anyway, with it being Shanghai, with it being a track that isn't really raced too much these days in league racing generally, similar to Portimao that we had at the start of the season, with it also being a track that isn't really raced much in real life F1 either, it becomes one of those things that maybe it's a track that can throw up a bit of volatility. Whoever's practiced it doesn't really appear in a lot of league racing circuits or just generally in F1 esports all too much, so I wouldn't expect to see this on the calendar all too much and people be too comfortable or confident with this particular venue. So we'll see. Hopefully there's an opportunity today for something a little bit spicy to get thrown up. We love spice here in PSGL. We had a very spicy finish last week. Of course, missing Jack Humphries this week. He is not in attendance. He is the only usual suspect who we will be missing this week. Instead, it is Franek Morowiak to take his place. A very accomplished driver in his own right, who's attended in Tier 3 at least once before. Anyway, let's crack on with qualifying. Plenty of people backing up and burning fuel, but this track, very, very difficult for one reason and one reason alone. Long, sweeping corners, lots of difficulty picking up traction. You've got, of course, that first corner, often very difficult to just get the front tucked in. It wants to wash out and away from you, losing you loads of time. You've got to make sure your line is good. And then, of course, you go through this infieldy section, very typical of most tracks really in existence these days, where you have this kind of tight, twisty infield section. But the second sector really ramps up to be a couple of quick corners in succession. Quite technical, very, very easy to go and explore the track limits a little bit too much, especially on the exit just here. But Sven Schumacher does a great job at keeping it pinned in. And then we go and brake very, very aggressively. Down to fourth gear for the traction because it is uphill off camber, and then you want to try and ease that throttle pedal in as best you can. The car is going to take a long time to grip up, so you really want to stick with it for as long as you can. In Sven Schumacher's case, great job of it there, but that corner is also a tyre killer. And you've got to be very, very cautious of your tyre temperatures over the course of this lap here in China, because it can be very, very afflicting towards your overall lap time, especially on these final few corners where track limits again on this final corner are super duper important. That sounds like the arrival of Alex.
It is. I'm here.
Thank goodness. I've had to be talking all by myself, mate. All by myself. And I know for a fact that the live stream, the chat doesn't want to just hear me talking all the time.
I'm sure they do. Don't worry.
I'm sure they want to hear you and your beautiful dulcet tones.
Thank you. I'll just be a minute. Just
yeah, no problem, no problem. I'll keep cracking on. We've got a couple of lap times already being posted. Fionn McKee currently sits top of the table with a 31.664. Closely followed by reserve driver Jensen Randall, who's had a mixed bag of performances. Of course, first appearance out in Austria was not a good result for Jensen Randall by any stretch of the imagination, but last week wasn't too bad, a point-scoring finish, and now, provisionally at the very least, in P2, just 0.05 of a second ahead of, 600 seconds, sorry, ahead of Jane Tripkov, and just a further, I think, pretty much the same distance back of Fionn McKee. Rishan does slide in, just 0.07 of a second faster than Jensen Randall in P2, but so far a good showing from the guys. Also want to point out that Matteo Longay has now got a full-time seat at Haas as of this week, so that'll be interesting to see Matteo Longay in the Tier 3 Championships. Are you looking to be in soon, laddie? Oh, he's gone again. All right, sweet.
Sorry, no, I'm here. Sorry, I was just calling to me. My bad. Yeah, I'm just communicating with online services.
Oh, that old chestnut. It does take a fair whack of time, that, to be fair. So I'll forgive you on just this occasion.
Thank you.
Yes, but yeah, looking at the top of the field at the moment, usual suspects pretty much all where you'd expect them to be. Obviously, Lillian had a week off last week, and as such, that is probably not affecting them too much. Just a 6th place start at the moment with a 31.8. It's not the end of the world for Lillian here. It's a reasonably respectable lap time, so not anything to cry about. So straight into the pits now for pretty much everybody who has been on a lap. It's going to be that cycle again. No one else really left to set a lap apart from Ian Van Oonen, of course, who I think invalidated his in-lap or whatever this second attempt was going to be anyway. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Van Oonen just diving into the pits here as well. So, Alex, all set up, ready to go?
All good, all good. What's the best way to start this? Is anyone on a lap?
No, everyone's coming into a lap right now. Everyone's coming into the pits, so you're going to have to wait a little while. Rishan did just do a... oh, it's disgusting. Thanks, F1 game. Rishan did a Sebastian Vettel in the Chinese pit lane there and overtook Noel Carmen's trying to get back into the box sooner. Only for Noel Carmen's car to ghost through Rishan and get put in the box first.
Wow. Have we discussed the penalties of last week?
No, I have not.
Ah, well, let me take you through those. So, Jack Humphreys did end up receiving quite an extensive amount of time penalties, which ended up causing him to only score 2 points, which is very unfortunate for him because he did drive very well. It did give Timo Zelenkovic the win on his debut, so massive props to him. Have we got him today? We do. He's currently in P4, so yeah, great job from him. Andre Lopez got a very deserved 2nd place, with Rishan getting 3rd. So yeah, that's what happened.
Yes, yeah. Despite the dramatic ending to last week, penalties applied. We all knew it was coming, really, after we'd seen the incidents that Jack Humphreys had been involved in. So, yeah, he's not with us this week, though, Jack Humphreys. Just another note on that one. It is Franek Morowiak with us this week instead, filling in for Jack Humphreys, who's not available. So Jack Humphreys' Championship Challenge will take a week off. Just a quick sabbatical, like Mika Hakkinen. He never really retired. He's still on sabbatical.
Indeed, I am just checking something. I heard someone said in the chat that he had gone to F2, and
I
just
hadn't
wanted
heard.
to see if that actually had happened or not. Because he's not in the check-in, I don't think. So maybe he did. Maybe he did. Let's double check that. Keep talking. Oh, no, I'll come back.
Maybe
oh, yeah,
so.
No, he is. Jack is in F2 now.
Oh, he's been promoted. Okay, wonderful then. Good news for Jack. Very happy for him to be promoted. Of course, interesting that he's promoted over somebody like Lillian, but maybe Lillian turned that down because he's on a championship charge at the moment. So
yeah,
interesting nonetheless. Either way, yes. So Jack Humphreys now out, I guess. Interestingly enough. So.
Yeah.
Probably going to have a couple more full-time drivers entering the field that we haven't seen before, but a great opportunity for Jack to get back into F2. Previously, I think he was an F1 Challengers driver at one time or another.
Oh, wow.
So great for him to be getting back up to the heights that we know that he's capable of.
Yeah. Phil McKee is on a lap coming through. I have no idea what the turn numbers are because of, how many there are in the first sort of sector. I'll just get that up actually so I can follow along. Exiting turn 6 now. You're into a long, is it flat out? It is flat out. Oh no, it's not. You have to lift turn 7, completely killing the tyres there. Those long, high-speed corners completely destroy the tyres, so you'll definitely see a lot of tyre wear in this race. So that's potentially something that the drivers have to manage. Heading towards turn 11. entering another loop. Really important to get this section right because it's going to set you up for the entire straight. So we've got to make sure you're getting the power down as quickly as possible, not making any mistake. Power down onto the very, very long straight. I think it's one of the longest. Obviously, you've got Azerbaijan and China and Mexico that are also really long, but China is definitely up there. Heavy braking into a hairpin just after the 100-meter board, into third gear or fourth gear, third, whatever you want to chuck it in. A lot of the gears work on this game. It depends how you drive. Exiting that, going into the final corner, as he gets a snap of oversteer, opens the DRS, and he's messed up that lap. He's not going to gain any more time from that. In the meantime, Menno Nielsen has gone P1 with a 131.653, so it's very close at the top there. Only 11 thousandths separating those two. Andre Lopez goes P1 with a 31.629, a great lap from him. Just looking at Lillian, I think he's just started his lap, so Lillian obviously a title contender. I will let you take us through this one.
Yes, Lillian has been really the man to beat throughout the course of this season. Pretty much undefeatable for the first few rounds of the season. Podium record was 100% up until a few rounds ago as well. Just generally has been altogether dominant. And even the recovery drive from the mistakes that were made in Austria was commendable, at the very least, for Lillian. Obviously not in attendance last week at Baku. Personal stuff to attend to, but still maintains his championship lead, and this lap is already looking pretty damn tidy. Like you said, though, it's really important not to overheat the tyres around here, and as it comes to race time, there's a Haas just reversing onto the circuit. Not quite sure who that was, but clearly a bit of an off-track excursion turned into diving into the wall. But for Lillian here, nothing of the sort. Car looks nicely balanced, throttle pedal, very, very important to just ease it on throughout this very, very long loop as it slings you down what is an enormously long straight for an infield circuit such as this one, as he now just waits and waits and waits with that DRS open, that battery all deploying the entirety of this straight into the hefty braking zone. This is where you'll see all your overtakes happening on the most part throughout the course of the race, and now just got to negotiate this final corner. Take as much curb as you dare on the inside and as much as you dare on the exit. Don't invalidate, that's the most important thing, and that is a tidy lap from Lillian. That's what we've come to expect from the Frenchman. 2/10 clear at the top of the table.
What a lap, 2/10. That is a big gap. I think that completely highlights his performance this season. Completely above the rest. Obviously, we do still have a little bit of time left. I think they'll have enough time to do one more lap. But that is a big gap for everyone to challenge. Arishan has gone P2 with a 31.617, so that's a really good improvement from him. I will also set him up nicely for his last lap. Timo Zelenkovic does a 31.475. He had a great performance last week, and he's showing that he wants to do it again, but he's now met Lillian. Lillian is insanely quick, so Timo Zelenkovic definitely having a rivalry, and Lillian also having a rivalry now. Someone he can actually fight who's a similar pace to him. But that is a good lap from Timo Zelenkovic. You can't fault that at all, and you can only wonder how much he can gain the next lap as well. That could really set him up nicely for a potential pole position, but Lillian out there is really commanding it at the moment.
Yeah, that's still a hefty advantage, even with Timo Zelenkovic trying to contest in amongst all of that. You got to anticipate as well that even if Zelenkovic can find something in the next lap for himself, that Lillian surely is going to be able to do the same. Zelenkovic, obviously, our sample size for his performance is pretty small throughout the course of the season so far. We've only had one race with Zelenkovic that's really anything to speak of. But Lillian has proven numerous times that they are able to consistently get up and ahead of the rest of the field, just simply by pure skill more than anything. Just that pure outright pace. It transfers from qualifying to the race pace as well. So Lillian definitely a threat to be looking out for. But just want to give a quick shout out. At the moment, a P7 for Matteo Longe on debut, at least on full-time debut. Pretty decent result for Matteo so far. Yeah,
it is. He's been a reserve so far. His performances this season, I don't think they've really stood out too much, but it's quite inconsistent, I think. But I think he's got time. It'll be good for he'll develop nicely, I think, throughout the season to see what he can be. He hasn't actually scored a point yet, but he's been quite unlucky, I think. He's only started 2 races as well, so you've got to give him that. But from what we have seen, it's not really consistent in the sense that it's he might be up there in quali and then not really there in the race, and his that's sort of thing. So it's definitely stuff to work on, but obviously again it's like, oh sorry, he's had 4 races, not no, he has had 2. Sorry, look at the wrong thing. But yeah, it's like Timo Zlankovic. There's not too much to go off of. So yeah, I'm excited to see what how he's going to do and how he can improve.
Yeah, indeed. I'm excited to see the development of a lot of these drivers, and I think we've been seeing it throughout the course of this season so far. A lot of drivers have really come into their own. I know, for example, like Rishan Smith is a very young driver. I think he's maybe 15 or 16, and he's been putting in some really solid performances as well. We've got a lot of young drivers in this Tier 3 field, and it's good to see them, getting the time of day, at least, in this level of competition against the competition they're against. So yeah, this is a really positive environment, I think, for a lot of these upcoming F1 esports contenders, or wannabes, should we say, into the future. But for the moment, let's have a quick lay of the land. Let's look over the landscape. I think 2 people for me that I have seen good qualifying performances out of so far this season who are disappointing at the moment. Definitely Sven Schumacher and Bartosz Samaro. I definitely expect more than 3/10 off the back of the field for Bartosz Samaro. He is a much better driver than that, despite his race results that give him credit for being a bit worse than that. Sven Schumacher as well, not known for being the best qualifier, but 15th is not really representative of where I'd come to expect him to be either.
Yep, we know Sven Schumacher, even if he does qualify badly, he'll do some sort of strategy thing to try and give him the edge. We'll see that. We do have new guys as well. I'm sure you've mentioned those. I think Franek Morawiak.
Yeah, Morawiak, because I think he's raced in 1 race this season so far, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. And then there's Boris something, I can't remember his last name. I don't think he's with us today, though.
There's also Alberto Barros, but I don't think he's actually supposed to be part of this session. I think he just joined by mistake and is subsequently disconnected. I'm not sure. Either way, yes, Jensen Randall, also 3rd race for him, but still a reserve driver. I mentioned that earlier. We obviously got Matteo Longate joining the field too. So a couple of new faces today. Fresh faces, but at the moment, none of those faces looking to make too much of an impact. I'm currently on board with Jensen Randall, but this lap time isn't like it's going to be troubling exactly the top of the sectors. So let's hop on board with Timo Zelenkovic, who's just cruising into the final corner, ready to start his final flying lap around this Shanghai International Circuit. Here we go. Flying down the main straight, Timo Zelenkovic looking to try and snatch pole from the Frenchman, the championship leader Lilian, who's out in front at the moment by just 0.06 of a second over the Ferrari driver. Now, just trying to get the apex nicely hustled in. It's a bit of a balance on setup here around Shanghai. Oh, was that a snap of oversteer on the exit of the corner? It looked like it as the camera cut towards the onboard. Either way, still going to try and make do with this lap. You're just 0.07 of a second down on your previous best time at the moment at the end of Sector 1 here for Zelenkovic. Fast left. Very, very fast. Not totally flat, though, as you previously highlighted. Truly a tyre killer. And now you've got to try and make those tyres sing as you try and hustle it into yet another apex. The car screaming, wants to understeer as Jane Tripkov slots in ahead of Zelenkovic in P2 with a 4.35. Not going to be good enough for P1, though, and Zelenkovic at the moment here not looking good enough for P1 either. He is 0.04 of a second down on his previous best time. He has a lot of work to do in this final sector if he wants to dislodge the Frenchman from the top of that timing screen. Yet still, we don't know what Lilian's response is going to be. He too is on a flying lap at the moment, as now Menno Nissen manages to slot in with a 4.26, just 100th faster than Jane Tripkov. So that is a beautiful lap time from the Swede, as now up the final stretch comes Timo Zelenkovic. What's he got in the locker? Final corner, gets it nicely. Oh, bit of oversteer on the exit curb, and that won't have helped his time. Just 700ths down, so no improvement for Zelenkovic. Lilian knows it. Lilian's just cruising. That looks like P1 secure, unless Rishan has anything to say about it. He's down in P7.
He's about a 10th and a half up at the moment. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, so he's about 10th and a half at the last split. We'll see what he does as he opens the rest. Can he do enough? It's only good enough for P5. So close at the top down. What a display from the Williams drivers right at the end there. The constructors' standings I don't think are too much looked at, but Williams are 9th, so I think that really highlights, this is a really strong performance from both of those two.
Well, both two drivers as well that have shown huge amounts of potential to run at the sharp end of the field over the course of the season. I mean, Menno previously has been sitting around podium contention positions. Whether it's fallen away from him in the later portions of races, it's, you know, up to him to really manage that situation moving forward. Tripkov as well has been a bit of a feast or famine type driver, much like he was in Formula 4 last season, where he would either win races or get podiums or basically not score at all. So that's probably attributing towards their constructors' success at the moment. But great to see both of those drivers up there on the front two rows. It is going to be Lillian, though, taking yet another pole position, but just 15 thousandths of a second behind is Menno Nielsen. And then finally behind that, Jane Tripkov a further 9 thousandths of a second back. Then you got to go a few more hundredths to find Timur Zelenkovic and Rashan Smith. And then finally back into the tenths of a second, it's Andre Lopez in 6th with Franek Moriak in the McLaren in 7th. Matteo Longe on full-time debut in 8th. Fionn McKee, previous session leader, down in 9th. Noel Carmen in 10th. Bartos Amaro 11th. Jensen Randall 12th. Sven Schumacher brings it up to 13th. And Felipe Sousa in 14th, with 15th going to Andre Molnar and 16th Korn de Backer.
Yeah, what a stunning qualifying there. That was actually very tense towards the end there, which is always nice to see. I'm excited to see what people can do now. I'm hoping to see Menno on the podium, Jane on the podium, but at the end of the day, there is only 3 podium slots, so all the drivers that I'd like to get on the podium probably won't be able to. And this is big, though, because Timur Zelenkovic, we know he's incredibly quick, and he did mess up on his lap, so we don't know what his true pace could be, you know, if he's not making mistakes. So it's definitely all to play for, as we'll see as we head into the race.
Indeed. Is it going to be like that scene from Kung Fu Panda, where it's, for Lillian, finally a worthy opponent with Timur Zelenkovic? It could well be. I'm excited to find out how it's going to pan out. Of course, we've still got 2 Williams in front of Timur Zelenkovic, but I think for me, if I'm looking at a contender for Lillian this race on race pace alone, just from what we saw last time out in Baku, I'm going to put a fair whack of money on Timur Zelenkovic to at least try and be a contender. I think Tripkov and Nielsen have a good chance at trying to get in the mix, but do I think they have the same amount of race pace as Lillian? Probably not, to be honest with you. But hey, it's going to be a great one. I mean, watch as China doesn't really provide great racing in real life, and as subsequently not really part of the F1 calendar anymore, it has given a few good league races over the years, mostly because of that big long straight and those huge sweeping corners. You get a lot of carnage turn 1 on this track, and I'm very excited to see it unfurl.
Yep, I remember, I think it was Jan Otmir went from last to first in esports on this track.
Yes,
so
was,
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I am certainly very, very excited, Alex. This is shaping up to be a great race with an even better qualifying session that's just slotted us in. So let's get ready to race. It is 5 red lights, and any second now, we are off to the races here in Tier 3. Lillian makes a good getaway. It is a really poor start, though, from Jane Tripkov. He's getting swallowed up by Timur Zelenkovic and Rashan. Up the inside, Timur Zelenkovic is actually the biggest loser as he now gets covered off, and it is Rashan trying to make all the moves up on the inside. There's a little bit of action, a little bit of a tussle going on down towards the back of the field.
He's an 8th.
I think everything has gone okay for the most part. No one's got any big damage, but Zelenkovic is in a bit of a bar fight right now. He has been mugged on this opening lap. Like you mentioned, that first corner was not kind to the Ferrari driver, and that's Bartos Samaro on yet another alternative strategy, up a number of places because of those medium tyres off the line, and as such, that's a big gap back now from P10 to P11 already opened up, and Timur Zelenkovic already at the back of this queue. Not where he wants to be by any stretch of the imagination. Oh, that's a McLaren off in the back.
Oh, that's not good.
That's Franek Morowiak, yeah, just diving off at the back of the exit stage left there. Anyway, carry on.
There was a bit of an incident between, I think it was Andre Lopez and Timur as they exited turn 4. I'm not sure if it, was it turn 3 even? I'm not sure if it was Timur not seeing Andre or Andre maybe shouldn't have been there. I'm not sure, but there was some sort of tussle, and that caused Timur to kind of half spin, which ended up getting a lot of people to kind of hit him in the side, which completely put him off. But that's given him a horrible lap 1, a horrible start to this race. But he's lucky. There's still 27 laps left.
Yeah, I'd be very worried if I was Timo Zelenkovic, at least from the outside POV at the moment, that he might have some kind of damage if he was getting beaten up in the side pods towards the start of this race. Obviously, it can get very, very aggressive with elbows out in these first laps, especially in such a wide opening corner. So I hope Zelenkovic doesn't have any long-term damage in this race, otherwise that's going to really be a bit of a party pooper for what we were prefacing before the lights went out. For the time being, Bartosz Samaro on these medium tyres needs to think about making some progress. Korn de Bakker and Sven Schumacher both already in the pits. Ian Van Unen is the other driver out on track at the moment on medium tyres. Again, progress for Van Unen at the moment looks to be fairly limited as he's down by 1.5 seconds on 12th place man Jensen Randall, who also had a bit of a dire start. He started up in, I think, what, 6th or 7th place for Jensen Randall. As such, now he's down in P12. Not the start that you want to see for some of these drivers, but there are some who are some big winners. Roshan notably one of those.
Yeah, I think Jensen actually started in 12th.
Oh, right,
I think that's what the telemetry says, but I think it's wrong because there's a bunch of other numbers that I think are wrong. But yeah, no, nonetheless, it's not where you want to be. Hopefully Timo Zelenkovic can come back. There's a bit of fighting towards the front. Bartosz Samaro trying to get past Noel Carmen. He's done it on the straight. He's going to have to outbrake him though. Noel Carmen does decide to back out of that. There's already a gap for me. Oh no, it's not. I had it on the wrong delta. There's actually everyone very close together. Not really any gaps forming until you get to about P13, where Ian Van Unen is 2.3 seconds behind Jensen Randall. So DRS train is expected as usual, which tends to happen until the pit stops, and then you get all that sort of kerfuffle, and then it will stay the same until the end when they start fighting again. At the moment, I think Ian Van Unen has disconnected because he's ghosted.
That would explain it.
Poor guy. That's not obviously not what you want to happen. But at the front, Lillian is controlling this race. He's got about a 7/10 gap to Menno. Menno just needs to try and stick with him. If he can look after his tyres while staying behind him, that could give him a really good shot later to stint, and then he's got to do the same again. Roshan as well. It's just about now staying in the DRS. You get this stage where it all sort of starts to die down, and then it's from then on it's about using your hair, thinking about the strategy and all that sort of thing rather than the actual pace, as long as you can stay within the second.
Yeah, and I think there's probably no track better for tyre management strategy as well. Not in terms of just pit stops, but in terms of how you actually drive the car on the F1 game than this track, because there's so many sweeping long corners. The front left especially takes an absolute bludgeoning at this track. Both of those front tyres really struggle for grip with all these long radius high speed corners. And it's not like they're like Saudi Arabia in particular either, where they're kind of like negligible corners. No, these were the ones that you have to slightly lift for, and that are just a little bit too much leaning on that front edge grip. And as such, it's really, really important to look after these tyres as best you can, and it's very clear at the end of the race or at the end of the stint who's been able to look after theirs the best, especially now that DRS is active as well. You're going to need these tyres if you want to try and make too many moves, especially on the brakes, and that is something that Bartosz Samaro is going to learn very, very quickly now that he's stuck in a DRS train with these medium tyres on.
It is. We'll see what he can do now. He does like to do this sort of thing, try and get as far ahead as he can before going on to the harder tyre and the alternate strategy, but it's kind of worked so far. He's gained 4 positions, maybe due to just a little incident, but still positions nonetheless, and he's able to stick with Matteo Alonga. It's just about utilising these tyres now and getting past as quick as he can.
Yeah, indeed. I also think as another note about this circuit as a whole, especially over a race distance, track limits I think are also going to be quite important. Yep. There's a couple of areas in which you can run very, very wide, of course, or even cut the corner on the inside, most notably the final corner. A lot of time to be gained there, also a lot of time to be lost, and a lot of time to get track limits penalties. End of the second sector as well, when you've got those far sweeping corners that lead onto a nice exit curb that looks all too inviting to go and take a bit of a wander onto the green AstroTurf. That's outbraking himself there for Bartosz Samaro, but still gets it tucked in just ahead of Noel Carmen, who was looming threateningly in his rear view. And so yeah, there's a couple of opportunities here to really lose out by penalties. So again, keeping it clean, making sure your tyres are in the window so that you're not going to be understeering off track. Going to be very, very important here for more reasons than just overall pace.
Yeah, I think you're right. Also with track limits as well. It's so easy to go wide here because you're trying to use as much of the track as possible. It's just so easy to, be trying to use that little bit more and just completely misjudge it. So I think at the moment I just gone through the race director. There's only one track limits warning so far, which completely unexpected. I thought there'd be quite a lot more, but they'll definitely be interested to see how that factors into the race. At the front now, Lillian has just broken the 1 second gap he needs on Menno Nieces, and Menno gonna have to try and switch on the battery a bit to try and get back in that. But to be fair, Menno's also got 8 tenths to Rishan, so he's clearly showing he's got a lot of pace. It's not just him; it's more just Lillian being ultra quick.
Well, the other thing this
As
comes
usual.
down to as well, actually, just to keep on topic for it for a second, is that both of the drivers at the front of the field have been using a considerable chunk of their ERS reserves. I mean, what, Lillian's currently on 12%, Menno is on 14%, so they're basically even in terms of their overall ERS deployment, whereas Roshan, who conveniently is within just what? Well, now
Oh,
ahead of Menno
oh,
Nielsen at the front. Going to be tucked back on the inside, though. Expertly driven by Menno, but Roshan using that ERS to try and stick it in there for a little bit longer. He's going to now try and hang it down the front straight as well. ERS under use as Menno once again no way through here with no DRS to defend. It is up the inside for Roshan, and this time it looks like he's made the move stick. Menno trying to keep it tight on the inside, but Roshan keeps the door shut. So now the Dutch driver takes control of the second spot on the podium. Does he have anything in reserve to now reel in this 0.6 of a second that he needs to get back towards Lillian? Well, I'll tell you one thing, he has a little bit more battery, but it's not much. It's a negligible amount of battery in the grand scheme of things, and that little snap of oversteer on the curb is not going to help him anyway.
no, it's not. I'm surprised he went for the move in the hairpin then, because that's cost them so much time. I'm not sure if that was worth it, but we'll see. We'll see what pace, because maybe if he felt he was being a bit held back by Menno, but I don't think that's the case because, there was a gap. So yeah, it's going to be a challenge to break that DRS gap again. 8 tenths is really big when you consider how fast these cars are going. So I think he's kind of just messed it up here. In all honesty, I don't think he should have gone for a move. Especially when you've got such a long straight that you can do it without losing any time. I don't know what I don't think that was the smartest thing to do.
Yeah, I agree with you there, but Andre Lopez, I think, has just made a move on Jane Tripkov, if I'm not mistaken. Went up the inside of Tripkov, unless that was a bit of a defense that I was seeing being offered there. I'm not quite sure. I wasn't paying total attention. It was in the back of shot when we were looking at Roshan. But Roshan here is now 2 seconds behind Lillian. So that gap isn't coming down any amount, and it seems that Lillian, once again, as with most weeks here in Tier 3, just has the measure of the rest of the field. And also just has that little bit extra in the locker. As soon as he sneaks out of that DRS window, he's able to just eke out that tenth and a half a second a lap. It's pretty free for him, at least at this stage. It looks comfortable, looks calm, looks nice and collected, and Roshan is, well, still limited on his battery use, really, in order to be able to try and bridge that gap. It's not going to be anything really crazy happening here now, I feel, with the front runners, at least, until we get to that pit stop phase. That might be where Roshan looks to do a bit of an undercut, because the medium tyres on a track like this will be extremely potent when they're in the window, but they will go off very, very quickly, as we've seen with Bartos Amaro not making any further progress, just 7 laps into his medium tyre stint.
Yep. I was just thinking, Timo Zelenkovic has not gained a single position. I think he's really struggling, so maybe he is damaged, or maybe he's just, not able to overtake. Obviously, when you're in a DRS train, it does become a lot more difficult, but he definitely does seem to be struggling. I'm also really amazed by Lillian's pace. He's just lost a little bit, but I'm not sure if Rishan's, gaining on the straight because he's got a lower wing setup or whatever, but he's gaining so much on Rishan, like, just throughout the lap. It really amazes me just how naturally quick he is. I'm certain we'll see this guy in esports one day.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. Lillian just sensational throughout the lap. There was a little bit of a move trying to be made there by Timo Zelenkovic on Fionn McKee. Looks like he's going for another move up the inside at turn 1 here. It wasn't successful first time around. Fionn McKee hung it in all the way around the outside and managed to get the inside once again. The same move pretty much, been done again by the Irishman. Great defense offered up there by the Aston Martin driver. And now Zelenkovic left wanting once more after deploying a huge chunk of his battery. Going into that set of moves that he's tried to make on Fionn McKee, he was at 75% ERS deployment. He's now down to 33. So Fionn McKee is really making life difficult here for Zelenkovic in 10th place.
He is. He's fighting a lot, which is fair enough. We know he's quick. He's perfectly entitled to do. I think Tima was a little bit cautious there because obviously that's how he, lost all this position in the first place, exiting turn 3 or turn 4, whatever it was. That's what ended up costing him all these positions. So he probably didn't want to fight too hard. Hopefully, we do see him getting through the field at some point because we know he's quick, and I'd love to see a battle between him and Lillian. But at the moment, it's looking ever increasingly unlikely, which is a bit of a shame. But that happens. We'll see what he can do.
Yeah, I think if I'm Zelenkovic here, I'm thinking about maybe coming in early as well, just to try and leapfrog a couple of these guys. I feel that Zelenkovic is probably a little bit frustrated sitting behind this train, knowing that he'd had an opportunity to be a bit faster than all of these guys, just because of that DRS though, and because it is so strong on such a long straight and has so much time to be effective. It really is one of those things in which it's very difficult to make up places if you're sat inside of a train like this. You need to have a considerable pace advantage, or you need to have a considerable ERS advantage to make a move like that work. And unfortunately for Timo Zelenkovic, every turn that you have where there's an opportunity to make a big braking lunge into it, turn 1 and the hairpin at the end of the very long straight, immediately the next corner after goes the opposite direction. So if somebody can hang it in around the outside with you, they're going to have the inside for the next corner, and that's going to leave you short of room. So for Zelenkovic here, he's got to recoup and think about another way through. For the time being, though, everything at the front looking pretty stagnant. Roshan pretty comfortably ahead of Menno and Andre Lopez for the time being, but Lillian again maintaining that 2-second gap, not pushing on any harder than he has to, just maintaining, just controlling, just calculating his way through this race.
Yep. At the moment, Lillian doing all he needs to do, really. He's maintaining that 2-second gap, so completely fair to him. I think the battle, is now more for second place. So we'll see what Menno can do. We'll see what Andre Lopez can do. We'll see what Jane Trippier can do. I mean, to be fair, I can keep going on. 1st to 10th, I could see all having a shot at the podium. If they just, once they try and get some moves done, because you don't really want to risk too much at the moment. You don't want to risk falling out of that DRS train. So, we're not going to see too much happening unless they're clean moves on the straight, I think.
Yeah, Jane Tripkov there had a pretty interesting interpretation of track limits at the
yeah,
front.
He got a warning. I did check that. Yeah, no, he's only on one warning though, so he is chilling at the moment. Yeah, it's a bit of a not boring, but eventless part of the race at the moment. It's just until we get to the first pit stops that we're going to see things changing. Bartel tomorrow, his mediums I think must be completely dead. He's not able to gain any more on the hard drivers. China being a tyre killer, it's pretty expected. I think the hards are probably better because the mediums are just going to feel... The mediums here are probably going to be like the softs on every single other circuit. They're going to die off incredibly quickly and be absolutely useless. So maybe medium to hards is a bit smarter here. You get the horrible tyres out of the way and then you can remain at a consistent pace towards the end, because tyre warm-up won't be an issue on this track. It's like Saudi Arabia. On your outlap, your tyres will not take long to warm up. Even the hards, which can be ice cold, shouldn't take too long to warm up. So maybe the medium to hards is the better strategy here, is what I'm thinking. I think we'll see, but because I can't see the mediums being sustainable towards the end of this race.
Yeah, the only thing got to think on that tyre warm-up discussion, though, is that with the first corner and basically the first sector being filled to the brim, with so many long radius corners, having cold tyres and no grip is going to lose you a shed load of time.
Yep.
But of course, in the later portions of the lap, you should be absolutely tidy. Exactly like you say, tyre warm-up will be very, very quick, just because of how much of a beating the tyres get, how much kinetic force, how much load is being put through that Pirelli rubber. Virtual or not. Even in real life, the same applies, really. Tyre warm-up at China here historically been something which is pretty easy, but it's the tyre management around this circuit. We've seen, like, 2-3 stoppers in the past. And on this circuit, back when we had the hyper softs and the super softs and the ultra hard or whatever there were, you know, we had a variety. We had a whole rainbow of tyres back then, and I kind of miss those, to be honest. As a completely aside note. Anyway, let's focus back in on what is still real and what is still in front of us. That is the medium and hard tyres, all 17 remaining cars on the grid. I will note that Ian Van Oonen ghosted car is just allowed Corn de Backer and Sven Schumacher to slowly close up to the back of it, but it's still 15 seconds drift to the back of the field. So not really sure what's going to be the overall strategy for those guys, Corn de Backer and Sven Schumacher, considering as they box on lap 1 onto medium tyres. So I think they're going to be pretty much writing themselves out of this race very soon, barring a safety car.
Yes. I just had an idea. Sorry. Yeah, back to the race. Sorry, I was just doing something. Sorry. Yeah, at the moment, at the front, I'm going to keep talking about this because it's a pretty consistent topic. Rishan is still obviously 2 seconds away. Yeah. Sorry, I was completely out of it then. I was just doing something. Yeah, what is there to talk about?
Well, I will say this. I will say this, actually, just quickly. Bartos Samaro is about to lose 1 second to Matteo Longe. But aside from that, Rishan, yeah, like you say, hovering about 1.92 seconds, right? That's pretty much a steadfast fact at this point. That's not really going to change too much for this race. But I will say that Menno Nilsson, Andre Lopez are closer this time around than they have been for the last 2-3 laps, I feel. Especially coming down that front straight, we saw Menno Nilsson kind of like slightly moving towards the inside a little bit, maybe looking to see whether there is a weakness in Rishan's braking, an opportunity for him to maybe find a way by. Just it all kind of stretches out throughout this middle sector. Maybe there is a little bit of washing of the cars, a little tiny amount of dirty air. Obviously, these ground effect cars still produce a bit of a wake behind them. It's just felt at a much, much closer distance than it was in previous iterations of Formula 1 cars. But yeah, there's a little bit more pressure being applied by Menno and Andre Lopez at this stage. Admittedly, not much this time around, so as soon as I go and talk about it, it kind of falls flat on its face, but there was a little bit more pressure being applied by these guys.
Yeah. I've had a complete brain leave thing. What are they called? What's it called when you like completely forget something? I'm having a brain...
Amnesia? Amnesia is the psychological condition when you forget something. Well,
that's
when you
not what I
forget
meant.
stuff.
I meant I've had a
aneurysm.
Oh my goodness! Why can't you know? It doesn't matter. I'm gonna forget.
Stroke, aneurysm, any of the above.
It's called a.
Okay, I'm gonna let you think about that, and then you can get back to me.
Know.
Okay.
I'm having a mare today. No, I don't know. I've had a forgotten what it is. I've just blanked. A mind blank. A blank mind. Is that a thing? A mind blank?
Not something that I've heard before.
Never mind. Anyway, oh no. Bartos Samaro's mediums, I think, have completely fallen off.
They are dead. They
are dead. He is out of the DRS. He's probably boxing very, very shortly. To be fair, we are at the halfway point pretty much. I'm surprised he's gone this long on them. Maybe he's trying... No, he wouldn't try medium to soft. That'd just be suicide. Given the fact that the tyres, you know, they die pretty much instantly. Well, the soft tyres, they all die pretty much instantly. I'm watching Bartos on board. He's got no grip at all. He's using all his DRS. He does look like he's going to pit this lap. So that'll be a first change. Who's the other driver on the mediums? Oh, they're all at the back.
Yeah.
Sven Schumacher, of course, is on an alternate... Oh, no, he's not. He had to pit at the end of lap 1. I think it was probably front wing. Bartos Samaro, though. We'll see if he's in the pits this lap. I'll be very surprised if he stays out, and he is into the pits. So that is going to be the first pit stop
with
of this
Theon
Grand Prix.
McKee, by the way.
Ooh.
Theon McKee, Jensen Randall, all coming in off their hard tyres. It's Bartos Samaro who's doing the inverse of these guys off the hard tyres, or off the medium tyres onto the hards. This is going to be an interesting little pit stop moment here. 3 drivers in, 2 different tyre compounds. The hard tyres off now, the Aston Martin and the Alpha Tauri. They're going to look to try and hustle up to a few more positions. Of course, Theon McKee was holding Timo Zelenkovic pretty much in deadlock in ninth place. So if Fion can get a nice little outlap together here, get these tyres up to temperature, there's a chance in which the Irishman might be able to make up a huge amount of ground. Sven Schumacher has retired from the session. No point continuing on at the back of the field when you're that far behind. Ian Van Unen's Ghost has come into the pits as well. And I did see a massive snap there for Bartos Samaro on these absolutely brick-frozen hard tyres. Still not up to temperature on the rears there. You could see it was just getting away from ever so slightly. And Fion McKee, those mediums that are basically made of chewing gum after the first sector with how hot they're likely to get, is already right on the back of the Haas car. And one would assume that is likely a combination of the fact that the medium tyres are obviously now working and the hard tyres are not. So Bartos falling backwards and Fion moving forwards, and we'll likely see the overtake happening here and Fion just cracking on with his race.
Yes. I think... Oh, everyone's pitting now.
Here we go.
Everyone. Andre Lopez is into the pits. I think they were maybe judging off what Bartos showed what the mediums can do, you know. But this might be the default strategy anyway, I'm not 100% sure. But those mediums can clearly go half the race. They'll be horrible at the end, but they can do it. But I think what we've seen from this first stint is that the mediums, the advantage that they have, if any, dies off very quickly. So maybe the hards are the right thing to do here. We'll see, because Bartos Samaro, has just spun round and he's made contact with Kornbacher, and he is out of the race. I think... Okay, I'm going to give you my quick analysis on what happened there.
That's a safety car.
Is still alive.
Or it's a VSC.
It's a VSC. So, Bartos Samaro, I think, just maybe cold tyres, sent it on the last corner and just kind of spun round with Kornbacher behind him and Kornbacher T-boned. Not 100% sure. Potentially, Kornbacher maybe went for a move that I didn't see. I'm not 100% sure.
Well, DeBacker's got no front wing now, so that's pretty much curtains to DeBacker's race.
Poor guy. At least that's not a full safety car though. So many people would be very annoyed if that was. Yeah, that's very unfortunate. But what I was going to say is maybe Bartos Samaro has made the right strategy decision and we'll be able to make up some places. I don't think he's going to really be able to do that anymore, as Franek gets a drive-through penalty for speeding under the safety car. I think he was near the back anyway, so I don't know how much that would have affected things. We have got green flag racing though. Yeah,
that's Rishan into the pits, by the way, and a couple of other cars diving in the background as well. I think that's Matteo Longe, Jane Tripkov, all following suit with Rishan into the pits. Lillian and Menno both sticking it out for a lap longer here. Timo Zelenkovic also doing the same. I think he just wants a bit of clear air, maybe to show off this pace, maybe to show off some battery usage as well. He's been storing it up for a little while, so big in-laps here for all the guys who've stayed out on these hard tyres for a little bit longer. Andre Molnar also sticking it out for a while as well. Franek Morawiak with that drive-through penalty, ultimately going to give up on the race. Doesn't really see much way of him scoring points, considering as I don't think he'd stopped either. So that is certainly spiced things up a little bit. It's a shame the VSC didn't end a little bit later, because there might have been some drivers who might have tried to sneak in under the VSC there. But as it is, I think that VSC almost gave some of these guys a little bit of time on tyre warm-up that they otherwise would not have had in racing conditions. I don't know whether that works out the opposite way or not. Just also to touch on the medium tyres, you were saying that you think that the hard tyre may be the better option towards the end of this race here. I think that maybe the mediums will perform slightly better towards these end stages because there's less fuel in the cars. They don't quite have to have that same weight transfer being put through the front tyres. So they may be a little bit better off, and they may just have a little bit longer of an effective window. But I do think you're right in the sense that they may just fall off quite quickly, at least compared to those hard tyres. But we're not going to get to see that comparison too much live, because all of those people who were on medium tyres at the start are unfortunately no longer racing.
Right, Lillian is into the pits now. We're going to see if Rishan's undercut has worked. He's been using his battery. He's been pushing this lap. I say using his battery. He's still got quite a lot of it. I think he was saving quite a bit before. But Lillian is now into the pits. Timo Zelenkovic still staying out, trying to salvage something from this race. But into the box comes Lillian, changing onto the mediums as expected. and Rishan is on the main straight, and I think Rishan is going to be very close to Lillian here. The gap wasn't too much over a second, and now Lillian's going to be on cold tyres. Rishan has caught him up immediately, and Lillian's already going to be under pressure from the Mercedes, and Rishan sent it down the inside of turn 2. He tries to go round the outside for turn 3. He's not going to be able to do it yet, but remember, Lillian is still on cold tyres. They do make contact. Rishan still behind, but he's going to have the battery, and he's going to be able to send it round the outside into the hairpin. The undercut has worked brilliantly for Rishan as Lillian still tries to defend on the cold tyres. He locks up the front right, trying to get the power down now. Rishan is into the provisional lead. Lillian's in P2, and all that has got Andre Lopez into P3, well, provisionally P3, behind Lillian, very close to Lillian completely losing out by staying out of that extra lap.
Yeah, Lillian really has missed out there by quite some margin. That's a huge gap that's been recovered. And now, of course, Andre Lopez is looking ultra feisty as these medium tyres are still yet to get completely fired up here for Lillian. That first sector was a nightmare. And Rashan, well, he's not waking up just yet. He's still dreaming about race wins, dreaming about leading this race in the net. In the net score, I guess. No pit stops made for Andre Molnar and Timo Zelenkovic just yet, but I'm sure they'll be coming in very shortly. I think Zelenkovic is going to lose out heavy. I mean, look at Fionn McKee, for example. His advantage was completely cut down by that virtual safety car. All the time that he could have made up on those medium tyres has fallen away from him, and he's now down in 11th. Behind Matteo Longe and Felipe Sousa, who are both dicing for position at the moment. But anyway, let's look at where Zelenkovic is going to come out in comparison to the rest of the field. At the moment, it's already not looking good, Bev. He's down the field quite some way. That's 5th, that's 6th, that's 7th, that's 8th, 9th. And once again, back behind Fionn McKee, even further back, actually, behind Jensen Randall. That has not worked out well for last week's race winner at all.
No, the overcut, clearly a horrible strategy. But we do now have a race on our hands. Will Lillian wait to the end, given the pace that he has, to try and make a pass? I'm not sure. We could see him going for a move earlier on and trying to get Rishan out of the DRS to just make that life for Lillian a little bit easier. We'll see. I'm not really sure. If I was Lillian, I don't really know, in all honesty, but they have dropped Andre Lopez. Nearly. It was just over a second, for about a second. Andre, though, still able to stay in the DRS. But yeah, I'm not sure what Lillian's going to do here. I think he's definitely got options.
Yes, he does have a few options here. He can sit behind, he can go straight for the move and try and open that advantage up again. Of course, that does leave him at risk to Rishan having that DRS and making a bit of an effort to fight back. It seems that on this straight, he's opted to just sit in behind. Rishan has outbroke himself a little bit there at the hairpin. Went a bit wide on the exit. Rishan trying to get back over to the right-hand side of the track to open it up as much as possible for that left-hander. Andre Lopez still not totally losing touch yet. The virtues of DRS is keeping him nice and in the fight, but throughout the middle portion of this lap, with considerably less ERS, I think about 25% less ERS deployment available to Andre Lopez than the other two drivers ahead of him, it may come back to haunt him in this race. Of course, if he can just maintain that DRS for now, he'll be able to recharge that battery over the course of the lap, but it is all about making sure that he's got that pace and he's got that battery available to him if he starts to fall a little bit adrift of these two guys out ahead of him. Of course, Menno is not out of this one either, just 4/10 back of that DRS range, and if these guys start scrapping in any kind of capacity, Menno will be right there with them.
Yep. Menno has lost, both Williams drivers actually, have lost out a little bit on the first stint. So yeah, definitely some redemption to happen. He's only 2/10 away. He is using his battery. So hopefully he can get back into this DRS train. He is very close, to be fair. Any sort of squabbling will enable that. Noel Carmen as well, still in that train as well. He's gained a couple of positions in the pits. I think it was P8 before. Now he's P6. So both Mercedes drivers, they've both gained 4 positions, and they both used their strategy to give them even more positions. So yeah, sorry. Gain them more positions, that's the word. So a good performance from those guys. I just hope that, I want to see if Rishan can keep Lillian behind, up ahead. At the moment, Fionn McKee and Felipe Sousa having a battle. Fionn McKee was ghosted for a second, I'm not sure why. That was odd, but they are still fighting. But Fion closes the door very tightly and is not going to give Felipe Sousa any sort of chance going into these first few corners.
Yeah, no room at the inn there for Felipe Sousa, so Fionn McKee moves up another spot. Great little move, and now has Matteo Longe set in his sights. At the front, though, I just wanted to note, at the end of that long straight in the final sector there, I was on board with Lillian at the time, and you heard the mother of all lifts. I'm not even kidding, that was probably about 100-meter lift to ensure that there was no overtake on Roshan there. And I'll tell you one thing, that lift does wonders for the ERS deployment that you save and manage to recuperate. That will enable Lillian to gain so much more battery than Roshan out front, who does not have the same liberty of being able to lift up behind an opponent. Just for comparison, that is now 55% battery for Lillian. Meanwhile, that plays 28% battery for Roshan. We'll see whether this is going to be another lifting session here. From the 200-meter board all the way to the 100, it is a big old lift for Lillian. No chance is he making a move yet. He is comfortable to take option one, Alex. He's just sitting behind this entire time. He'll make his move when he's good and ready.
Yeah, I'm just watching Roshan's fuel as well. Obviously, he can be lifting, coasting a little bit more, but he is losing quite a bit. Because I think it was on about minus 0.01 earlier, and I'm just watching it. It's on about minus 0.1 now, which isn't still isn't much, but it is more. And if that keeps going up, he's gonna have to watch that. And if he's like being forced to lift and coast, that's gonna give Lillian such an advantage, especially more towards the end of this race when it becomes more and more necessary. So that is something to watch out for. Obviously, underfueling makes the car lighter, but you do have to be careful with that. So we'll see how Roshan's able to manage it. Again, it's very close, and I'm probably just nitpicking here. But it is just something that you got to look out for.
Yes, indeed it can be, especially at this track as well, where you're on throttle for quite a hefty amount of time. Lots of lifting, lots of gear changes. It's one of those tracks that really does test the management skills of the driver. Speaking of management, though, Menno has managed to get back up to the back of this field, and I have a feeling that Roshan's pace at the front here might not be as quick as we're giving him credit for. Menno closed that gap down, obviously, pretty quickly, but also Tripkov on this lap has closed in quite considerably. It was about 2.2 tenths of a second. It's now, 2.2 seconds. It's now down to 1.8 seconds. That's 4 tenths in less than a lap that this gap has come down. Obviously, with the assistance of DRS, that gap's going to expand again. But look, Tripkov is closing, and with him, he will bring another group of drivers. That would be Noel Carman, Matteo Longe, Fionn McKee. Whoa, okay, that's an AlphaTauri that's just gone round at the back of shop there. That's Jensen Randall, who's just had an absolutely massive tank slapper of a moment, exiting the final corner. I think backed his way into the wall, so that'll be rear wing damage for Randall. And, well, that was unexpected, most certainly. I just caught it in the back of the shot. Not what you want to be seeing there for Jensen Randall, but I'm afraid that might just be curtains on his race as well. But looking here, I'm on board with Lillian now from the onboard camera shot. He is really pressing Roshan to maybe pick up the pace a little bit here, because people are closing. And the more people that get into this fight, the worse it might end up being for Lillian.
Yep, it is. Lillian obviously doesn't want to be under pressure from anyone. So at the moment he is staying behind, and I think he's doing the right thing, in all honesty, even though he's going to have the extra pressure from behind. The DRS is so powerful here, and I think had Roshan and, was it Menno, not fought in the first stint, they would have stayed in the DRS, as we've got yellow flag, and it's just a random round again. Very unfortunate. But yeah, so I don't think he wants to... Never mind, Lillian is going for the move on Roshan on the straight. He's got the DRS open. And he's into the lead, which I think seems to happen every race that I say something's going to happen, and the opposite happens. At the exact same moment. I don't know why this keeps happening. But that is Lillian into the lead, and he's going to be free to push now to try and drop Roshan from the DRS.
Yeah, indeed. And the other thing about that as well, of course, is that Lilian has much more battery, about 20% more battery to play with over Roshan. And that is not going to play into the Mercedes driver's hands at all. The Dutchman desperately going to be trying to scramble for every 10th of lap time that he can find. He's already experienced once this race just how quick the Frenchman can be when he's got clean air in front of him. Already that gap, 0.5 of a second. Lilian really pressing on. It's gone from 55% battery down to 27% battery in just the time it takes from that overtake to this moment. Still pressing that ERS deployment. That overtake button is getting a meaty workout from Lilian now in lap number 23, down to 19% worth of battery remaining. Roshan needs to do everything he can to try and stay inside of this DRS. It's so very important. If he falls out of it, he's not really going to have the ERS deployment to get back into it. And now more ERS being used here by Lilian. Into the braking zone they go. That is a purple sector 2 for this race from Lilian. Roshan has just about stayed inside the DRS. That'll be extremely crucial for Lilian, who has used almost all of his battery now, trying to break away from the Dutchman, who has actually rather wisely saved a little bit of his battery. There's that red blinking light on the Alfa Romeo, and now Roshan closing in once again. You have to think about your strategy now here, Roshan. Do you want to start duffing up Lilian? Do you want to start getting into a real bar fight? Because I think that might be the way to do it. So many races this season have been decided by Lilian just being able to get out front and clear off. Maybe interrupting his rhythm, interrupting his flow in some kind of a way is the way to beat the Frenchman, who is running away with his championship. His only contender at the moment in this race, realistically, is Roshan. And with 4 laps to go, they're going to start getting the gloves off and down and dirty, I'm sure of it.
Yep, I'm very excited to see what can happen. Fair play to Roshan. He is still in there. He's not giving up at all. I mean, yeah. What can he do? We've already seen though when Lilian wants to push, he pushes like mad. He can get way ahead. Noel Carmen isn't going to be pressuring that top 4 group, so hopefully that eases the pressure off a little bit for Roshan and Lilian. But Andre Lopez and Menno, I think, are just going to sit behind unless something happens. I don't really see them getting involved. It's just whether Roshan can have the pace to just challenge for these last 4 laps. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, indeed. You can tell that Lilian is really stepping up the pace here as well, because Andre Lopez and Menno both really struggling to stick with the front 2 men. Noel Carmen as well, obviously scrapping with Jane Tripkov, but that gap that Tripkov had nearly brought on down has expanded once more. I think, again, testament to the pace out front. Lilian really trying to stretch the field now, throwing everything at these last few laps to try and really push the limit of these tyres, of this car, of his battery, of his driving ability. Roshan losing out on corner exit, if you notice, especially out of that hairpin. Wasn't able to really make up the time. On braking, he's down to 0.3 of a second. On exit, it's back up to half a second again. More battery being used, though, by Lilian. Down to 11%. Roshan sitting on 19%. So there's 8% difference to play with between the 2 drivers here. It's not really going to be enough for an overtake, but if it comes down to it and both batteries are depleted, Roshan will have that little bit of an edge over the Frenchman. Again, you can see the gap with Noel Carmen absolutely exploding now. The gap, the pace of these front 2 drivers is so much stronger than everybody else on the field. Andre Lopez, I feel, just holding on by the coattails here to the DRS being offered up by the Mercedes driver out front. This is what it's all about, folks. These 2 now out front. Tactical battle with the ERS. It's been a strategy masterclass all race long, with the virtual safety car thrown in the mix too. It's been management. It's an endurance race, really, at this circuit. It feels tough. It is tough. And now Lilian and Roshan have to battle it out.
Yeah, so what you say about the traction, I've been watching both their Twitch streams on my second monitor, like, at the same time, because of the stream delay. It's pretty much identical where they are, which is quite handy. And just watching the throttle input, Lilian just seems so much more confident. Well, I say so much more. There's a very tiny difference, but you can see he's just getting the power down that little bit more quickly, which is really helping him in terms of traction, in terms of, you know, getting the grip in the corners. So yeah, I think it's just about confidence. In all honesty, I think Lilian knows where he's at in the championship. Potentially, there's even a psychological factor in it. I don't even know. But Lilian is just able to make that in corner exits, which I think is really interesting to look at. And I think Rishan's able to catch up a lot in the straights because he's got a lower wing setup, which could, to be fair, could also be why he's losing out on the straights, on the corners. That also makes more sense, obviously if you have higher downforce, you can put the power down more quickly. So, that's that's giving Lilian the corner advantage and then Rishan the straight advantage. So there's definitely setup play in here. Definitely, that's one reason for the difference in pace. But we do have about 2.5 laps to go of this race, and Rishan is not wanting to give up just yet. He is still within the DRS, and he's very close. If he can make the move at the right point, use the battery at the right point, he definitely has a shot at the lead here. I don't think he should wait, though, before the gap gets too big, because it's already, going up as the lap goes on. So we'll see what he does now. But yeah, he can't wait too long.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think Roshan is starting to panic a little bit here now. He's really trying to get the time back on Lilian anywhere that he can. Of course, DRS is hugely helping him with this, but the other thing you got to consider here as well for Roshan, he looks, at least from the outside perspective, like he's really trying to make up a lot of time on the brakes, and that's massively compromising him in the apex of the corner and, of course, on corner exit. I think that's what we're seeing a bit as well, with the confidence of the car, the downforce factor playing into it too. Lilian just braking at his own pace, and then Roshan really trying to have to make up a little bit of time on the brakes with that ERS and DRS advantage too. It seems that when we get into a corner, Roshan's got it all sorted, but on the exit and in the mid part of the corner, it really is Lilian's game. I mean, I will say, that first corner though, on the most part, Roshan looks like that's where he is strongest, and he's only got one more opportunity really to make that move work if he wants to. So he really has to get it together now on this final lap to see whether he has the pace, or on this penultimate lap at least, because he's only going to have one more opportunity at the point where he is strongest. Towards that end of the lap, this second sector into the third sector is where Lilian really starts to stretch his legs, really gets the advantage with that downforce setup that you're talking about, Alex. This is where Lilian is at his strongest, but Roshan not losing quite out as much as he was last time round. Remember, this time last lap, it was about 7-8 tenths of a second, the difference between the two. We're about 2 tenths down on that. Of course, it's not going to be enough for Roshan. He needs to press on a bit more, and that gap is right back to where it was, 8 tenths of a second. We just see it open up again there. That is not what you want to see if you're a Roshan fan. Duck into the inside to try and avoid the slipstream. That's Lilian trying to make as much of a problem for Roshan behind as possible. He's not going to be close enough to make a move at the end of this straight, but he needs to make sure that he focuses on the exit to make sure he's close enough into turn 1. It's 3 tenths of a second. Tighter on the apex this time, but way worse on the exit again. Roshan losing time, and now just trying to get this one lined up for the final corner. Just got to spit it out of here now, Roshan. This is your moment. The final lap of the Chinese Grand Prix here in Tier 3. It's a 2-horse race, really. As much as Andre Lopez might want to think that he's in it, Roshan is still very much in with a shout. He's close, but not close enough this time around, Alex.
Yep, he just needs to get that power down. He needs to be pushing now. He's only going to have one chance, and once that chance has come, it's gone. So he's got to be staying with Lilian for the entirety of this lap, and then he's got to have enough battery to make the move. It's going to be difficult, but we'll see if he can do it now. Back in F6, Roshan was insanely smart with what he did, and that's one of the reasons why I think he was able to win the championship and dominate the championship then. So we'll see what he can do now. He's kept the gap on about 6 tenths. I think it needs to be around 4 tenths, 5 tenths if you're going for a move. Obviously, he might choose to send it, we'll see. But he can't make any mistakes as we approach this final section. He's not going to the inside to try and get in the slipstream. He's just going for it, and now it's about the traction. The gap can't be too big if he wants to have any shot. It's about 7 tenths, and it's going to go up. And I don't think he's going to be close enough, unfortunately. It's a lot. It's going to be a hell of a dive bomb. They're both using all of their battery. I don't think Roshan has the tyres to be able to get that traction down, and you can see now he's not going to have enough, and Lilian is going to stay ahead going towards the final corner. So that's very unfortunate for Roshan.
Yeah, but a great race, beautifully managed, on top once again. After a week out, it is Lilian who crosses the line first at the Chinese Grand Prix. The Frenchman wins again and extends his lead in the championship once more. Roshan with another podium, close but no cigar once again. It is second place for him, third for Andre Lopez. Menno comes home in fourth, just outside of those podium places. Noel Carmen in fifth, Matteo Longe on debut full-time in 6th. Fionn McKee making up a decent response to what was ultimately a bit of a sad moment with the virtual safety car up into 7th. Timo Zelenkovic, someone we tipped at the start of this Grand Prix to be quite strong and challenging Lillian, didn't get the best start and never recovered, down in 8th. Felipe Sousa in 9th, with Jane Tripkov rounding out the point scorers in P10, somebody who was formerly up in P5 just with 4 laps to go, down in P10 at the end of the race.
Yep, what a drive by Lillian, though. I think he completely deserved it. He showed he's had the pace the entire race. It's unfortunate for Roshan, but I do think we have the deserved winner. Timo Zelenkovic, I feel very sorry for. Clearly, it's been a very difficult task to try and get up through the field. So that battle, we'll have to wait for next week. For that battle for the lead of the races. To try and get the most points for the rest of this season. Next race is going to be Mexico. So we'll see what happens there. I can't really remember who won in Mexico in the past, at least in terms of the drivers that I know. So I think it's good. It will obviously, it's blind to all of us. We've never seen these drivers before. It'll be really interesting. But there is your race result. Lillian got pole position. And he won the race. Didn't quite lead every lap or get fastest lap, but nonetheless, a great drive from Lillian. Roshan brings it home to P2. Andrea Lopez through P3. Menno P4, followed by Noel Carmen, Matteo Longe, Phil McKee, Zelenkovic, Sousa, Tripkov, Molnar, Randall, Van Unen, Korndebacker, Franek, Morowiak, Bartel Samaro, Son Schumacher, and I don't think Alberto Barlos is part of this. So that is Son Schumacher rounding out the race. But yeah, no, a very good drive from Lillian there. As I said, completely deserved, and I think he's completely got the championship in the bag now.
Yeah, that's going to be a considerable points lead as well for Lillian at the top of the table. So let's just say that this is looking like a very tidy season, a very tidy championship challenge from Lillian here in Tier 3. But that's going to be it from us this week, of course. Alex mentioned that next week is Mexico, so make sure to join us again next week for what is ultimately going to promise to be another DRS fest. We'll see you then. It's going to be very exciting. Alex, anything you want to say before we sign off for the week?
No, have a good week, everyone.
Yes, that's very much the sentiment. Stay safe, folks. Have a good one, and get practicing for Mexico.